If you've never had the opportunity to hear or interact with William Dunlap, you are in for a treat today. The Mississippi-born artist is as colorful with his words as he is with his paintbrush. And if you're unfamiliar with his work, this iconic painting of the Mississippi Delta should spark some recognition. Bill, welcome to Conversations.
It's good to be amongst you. I just drove down from Webster County from my old family home up there, through the smog and fog and rain and didn't get killed. So
the smog of Mathiston.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is a big urban metropolis.
We always blame smog in North Mississippi on the paper mills over in Tupelo and in Tuscaloosa as well. So you smell them before you hear them, before you see them.
But talk about that, because you still have a place up there and you're still connected.
Yeah, I come back, as I'm fond of saying to anybody that's listening, I said, you're from Mississippi? I said, yeah, I got out. My papers are in order. I don't have to go back. But I do all the time, religiously. I've kept an old the Starnes House, 1907 house, and I bought a church, an old Church of Christ, and had it desanctified and moved it onto the property. It's the best studio I own, I had the jacuzzi man from Winona come over to kind of turn the baptistry in a place where the Spirit could really move you. But he said the church wasn't deconsecrated, and he wouldn't touch the thing, so it just left there.
Well, you've got studios in Washington and in Miami and here, but you still come home. You like to come home and recharge.
Oh yeah, come on. I'm remembered in this part of the world for footballs I dropped in the Mendenhall game, and there were several. But I've been a few places and done a few things, but I mean, coming back home matters greatly. And my 20-year-old daughter, Maggie, who's a really fine artist, is in school in New York, thinks Mississippi's the most exotic place she's ever been. And damned if I don't think she's right. So I'm coming down here now. It's not in real time, but for the book festival, you're going to be involved in that too, as a matter of fact.
One of the best things I think that has come along in a long time in Mississippi.
It's remarkable. Yeah. But to do it in August, greater love hath no man than to come to Mississippi in August.
It's always good to see famous writers sweaty and have sweat stains on their back.
Well, the infinitely quotable William Faulkner once said that Mississippians didn't read books, they wrote them. And I hope that's not exactly true, this time.
Because you have a book out.
We got to sell some product.
We got to sell product here today.
And you do too, man. You're a publishing machine. You're just an industry, a one-man publishing industry.
Well, let me talk about you for a second, because I mean, I kind of, in a way, look up to you, which is good. And I owe you an apology. Let me just go ahead and start off the beginning of the show. I tweeted out the other day that I want to be like you when I grow up.
Yeah.
Which I think the bad part of that was the mentioning growing up, because I don't think either one of us really want to grow up, do we?
I think I tweeted back and said, who's growing up?
Exactly, exactly. And I know it took about 30 seconds for you to tweet that back out.
This is the wonderful thing about being an artist. It's like having an American Express card that you never have to pay the bill on. You can get into places and go places, and the art will do that for you. You see the world through the artist's eye, through aesthetic experiences, and it makes life bearable, as they say.
I think you're a storyteller. I mean, you do writing. You're one of the best speakers I've ever heard. You teach. You were even in a band called the Playboys. You were a drummer.
Yeah, with O'Doyle Smith, and with Tim Whitsett after that. I sent myself to college, kicking big R&B bands in this part of the world, and playing in trios and playing jazz and all. We were some of these, Carson Whitsett and I, we called ourselves, jazz players who condescended to play rock and roll for the money, and there was a good deal.
You made some pretty good money too, because I heard some of the numbers. So
we did okay.
I started drawing by Mom giving me crayons in church to keep me quiet. That's kind of how I got going. How did you get started? Because, I mean, was it something you started early on?
I wanted to be an artist before I knew what one was. And my family, to their everlasting credit, encouraged it and figured out I'm out to something, But I didn't really have any formal art education until college when you get to it. I'm in touch with a bunch of my old high school buddies. We went I finished high school over in Scott County in Morton. And as I'm fond of saying, Morton Attendance Center, that's when he started to consolidate schools. No one would dare call it a school. But, God, we had a good time. And there were about 62 or 65 of us in the senior class, and we all got on one bus and went to New Orleans for our senior trip. And I got to tell you, the worm turned for me then. The Delgado Museum of Art was great and wonderful art. Like we wanted to go to Bellingrath Gardens to see azaleas, But I'm showing in New Orleans now. I'm on the board of the Ogden Museum. I really like what's happening in that part of the world. But I just always drew. I mean, I was like you. I drew to entertain myself, and I drew because I could. And in first grade, I was the class clown. I could make these drawings. And back to this high school thing, I was reminded at a reunion recently that while we were all reading Julius Caesar, Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, I would come in every day with drawings of various people in togas, and it was pretty much out of Mad Magazine, of course. Body parts were cut off here and there, and the late Roy Johnson, Lord love him, Miss Gatewood was going over to him and said, "Roy, give me what you're looking at," and he ate the drawing right there, and I appreciated that so much.
Well, at least you know that your drawing made a difference.
Well, it could have gotten me kicked out of school.
A good point too. Yeah, definitely. Speaking of Mad Magazine, of course, I grew up with that too. And Jack Davis just recently passed, but it was just. But that's how I learned too. Is just sitting there looking at really great artists, and of course, by the time you got your degree up at Ole Miss, and then you went on to teach at Appalachian State. Talk about that, because I mean, suddenly you're going from Mississippi to the mountains of North Carolina. That's enough to give you a brain freeze.
Well, it was really kind of interesting. I joined 4 Mississippians up there, guys that all either taught at Ole Miss or had gotten degrees from there. Yeah. That's back in the days in the early 70s when college teaching jobs were passed around amongst a good old boys network. Mm-hmm. Now it's a good old girls network, so I guess it's their turn in a way. But I had a ball up there, man. Appalachian State was the equivalent of Mississippi Southern. Yeah. It was a teacher's college that was started in 1925, and I had a vague notion of what the pecking order was up there, Chapel Hill, UNC, and Duke and all. And about a decade ago, I gave the Haynes lecture at the art department at Chapel Hill and told them what my North Carolina bona fides were, that I'd come out of Mississippi like a feral animal with an MFA and taught for 10 years up there, and that I'd heard what people had called us at Appalachian State. Yeah. University of North Carolina at Tweetsie, which is a little railroad that runs through there, and they said that the state of North Carolina started Appalachian State in 1925 to keep the hillbillies out of Chapel Hill. And then after a pregnant pause, I said, looking at this audience tonight, I can see if that was the strategy, it was not completely successful. But I love going back to North Carolina. Those people were so good to me up there, and I came of age as an artist there. And the pristine Blue Ridge Mountains are just glorious, and they're like nothing I'd ever seen before.
A lot of your paintings are influenced by those mountains, and you talk about hypothetical realism.
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, it ain't real, but it could be. Yeah. It's one of those deals. I came up with that phrase with my tongue planted firmly in my cheek at a time when everybody either had to be categorized as an abstract expressionist, as a regionalist, as whatever. I said, I'm a hypothetical realist. The things aren't real, but they could be. And the same thing's true with these stories in short, mean fiction, which I found in the sketchbooks. They aren't real, but they could be. And
There's an Old Testament flair to it. Lots of sex, violence, and
death.
And death. It's awesome.
I say that in the introduction. If you haven't read the 23rd chapter of Ezekiel, you need to. That's nasty. I read once up at the spring, but at Tupelo, at Reed's wonderful bookstore up there, and that's where Reverend Wildman is, and is focused on the family. And they've been known to protest an art exhibition or two, and I was hoping they would come out and picket me, because a book like this needs somebody to come out against it. But I didn't even register on their radar. They still got to wrestle with Ezekiel, I think, the prophet.
Let me ask you this. This is coming from an artist who writes. And you're an artist who writes. And obviously, you started the drawing part first. The writing part came second. I know when I write a story, I picture a picture, I picture characters, and then I just let the characters go. How do you do it? I mean, how do you make that transition from seeing an image and putting it on a canvas to creating words?
Well, I've been making something out of nothing for as long as I can remember. And I basically just start, when I work on paper because I prefer it. And I work large because I'm of the school, if you can't make it good, make it big. And I'll do one thing every time I put a piece of paper or canvas on, I'll start in the upper left-hand corner and draw a diagonal line into it. And then I'm in it. And the analogy I use when I'm talking about this is like a real estate developer.
Right.
Once you get into a raw piece of property, or the Oklahoma land rush comes to mind too, you run out here and nail down a stake, and run over here and nail down a stake, and you try to develop it one way or the other. But I don't really know. The paintings paint themselves. The stories kind of write themselves. And, there's a certain kind of landscape with a Walker Hound in it and a cotton gin in the background. I could sell those all day long. But I couldn't do the other work if I didn't do these. And if I didn't do these, I couldn't do the other work. But I am, at this point in my life, the greatest collector of my own work. And I can't afford the stuff, quite frankly. But it's, I make enough art. I sell a little bit, but I make them because I want to see them.
Right.
And I really never, here again, the infinitely quotable William Faulkner, when asked about his work, whether it was plot or character, he said, oh, it's character. I just invent these people and then run along behind them, writing down what they say. And that's what happens with me. The paint drips and runs and splatters, and I'll turn them over and turn them upside down and crop them and find a painting within a larger one. And it's all problem solving. And you know, it's when you think about, you know, our generation of the rock and rollers, a lot of those guys were in art school early on, but they needed more applause through the proscenium arch. You've got to be prepared to be very much alone for a long period of time.
About to say, and that's something that you do in about everything that you're doing. You're in the studio alone for years. That's where teaching and I guess speaking probably has kind of a nice side benefit, doesn't it?
Well, you know, I'm from down here. This is an oral culture. We're a bunch of storytellers.
Right.
Everybody talks, and we don't have to make any sense, and it doesn't have to be true.
Right.
So the Mississippi of my youth was hypothetically real.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, it was the 19th century. People still bartered for things. They did favors for one another. There wasn't a lot of money. Nobody had any money. Didn't even talk about money. We certainly didn't measure anything by the dollar evaluation. And now, these days, in this post-Reagan America, everything's evaluated by money. We've monetized everything, and I guess that's okay. But when you're looking for an accurate yardstick to measure a human experience, the dollar is hardly a valuable one. It seems to
Probably a better way to keep score, wouldn't you think?
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Maybe so.
You know, you talk about those landscapes when you grew up, and you when you were growing up, they weren't much different than when your grandparents were growing up, and you would say some of the scenes in your paintings would be the similar ones they would see by pushing a behind a mule.
Yeah. And of course, when Eudora Welty's photographs, when they came out in the 60s, those little towns she photographed in the 20s and 30s hadn't changed very much. Now the railroads are gone, the interstates are in. That's changed a bit. There's not as much broom sedge out there as it used to be. And a buddy of mine, photographer Michael Ford, was in Oxford, Mississippi. He's in D.C. now, and he was down here on some sort of grant in the 70s. And his photographs from that period of time are so compelling and so interesting because Mississippi changed after that.
Yeah.
They made us stop leaving our old cars on the side of the road, and people don't leave their washing machines out there anymore. It's changed a good deal, and the steel construction building has kind of replaced the old farm buildings and the cotton gin is defunct. I'm not even sure there's a gin functioning in the Delta right now. People pick the cotton, compress it, put it on trucks, and just take it off somewhere. But I like those old defunct cotton gins, and they're usually in juxtaposition with old churches somewhere. Those are two structures that meant a lot to the folks back then.
And you see them a lot in your paintings.
Well, yeah, I think they're irreducible in a lot of ways. You know.
Talk about the foxhound. The foxhound is a major character in your work.
The Walker Hound, my daughter and my wife just did a book from Mount Vernon, and in their research they learned that 6 French hunting hounds were delivered from Lafayette to George Washington, and they're the bloodline of all the Walker Hounds that are around these days. All the foxhounds, yeah. So we have to believe that, but it's got a little beagle in it and a little blue tick. But my grandfather Cooper, my maternal grandfather, was a fox hunter up in Webster County, but he was of the old school. They fox hunted at night when the fox is out, and they fox hunted with pickup trucks and not with horses. They would 2 or 3 old boys would take their packs of dogs out and release them, and they'd drive from Ridge Road to Ridge Road and build a fire and listen to the dogs. And from the mouth the dog was giving, they could tell who had struck and whether it was a gray or a red. And I believed all of that crap. And they told these great stories, and they'd drink a little Old Crow whiskey, and build a fire. And the dogs were just out there tearing up somebody's cotton crop, and made the other farmers mad. But I'd ride along with my grandfather after that, and we'd find old house places, and he'd find the cistern and put tin over it so the dogs wouldn't fall in it. That would be a horrible death. And I think the most distressed I ever saw him was one day when he couldn't find a dog. We drove around for 2 or 3 days and couldn't find one. And this old boy went up to him and said, "Kaz, I think I seen your dog." I said, "Yeah, where's that?" He's over here at the Overton place, laying up on the porch. And my grandfather just cranked up the car and said, "No dog of mine would ever lay on anybody's porch." And he just drove right off.
Well, that was the thing about those hounds. They were all business, weren't they?
Yeah. They didn't care about us. They didn't want to be petted. And, but boy, they gave good mouth. They just sounded good, running through the woods. Man.
Definitely did. You love dogs, but your daughter recently lost a dog.
Oh, good Lord, man. More dogs have broken my heart over the years than women, and it's not even close. We got a whippet for her, as a matter of fact, and when she was about 3 or 4, and she and that dog were great companions, and at 17, she died, and by
That's
God.
a long run for a dog.
Well, the Garden and Gun, one of my favorite magazines. I like those people so much. They have a good dog column every month, and I wrote the good dog column that December was about a year ago. And in the with David DiMinivetto, who's the editor, going back and forth emailing, the working title for this story was Another Dog Story That Ends with a Shovel. But we didn't stick with that, as it were. But I tried to keep her up a little bit. She was a great animal, wonderful dog with all the same instincts. Didn't bark, short hair, scared of squirrels. Just what you want in a dog. But.
So they say the only problem with the dogs, they don't live long enough.
Oh, man, I know it.
So true.
Well, a friend of mine who's a devoted agnostic just told me the only thing that makes him think there might be a God is dogs.
I believe that.
That's pretty
And if you, of
cool.
course, flip their name around, there you go.
Yeah, that's true.
There you go. So that makes a lot of sense. You know, your daughter's coming up in the art business.
Yeah, she's doing all right.
And that's, it, you know, as a parent, you know, none of my kids draw. And they started drawing at an early age. I'd hit their hand with a ruler. But so go into accounting. Exactly.
Just what I was going to say.
Go into accounting. Do something at least so you can take care of me in my old age. But seriously, what kind of advice have you given her? Because it's a wholly different animal now than it was when you started out or even when I started out.
Well, I've thought about this a lot, and she should be the first to tell you that her mother was a good artist, fine artist. We never gave her any lessons. I'm the third best artist in my own damn family, as it turns out. But on these long trips, usually when she was in Montessori school, we'd take her out of one school around Christmas and put her in another one in Florida. I found that children were like electrical appliances. You could unplug them and take them to a place and plug them in, and they were just fine. And we'd take these long driving trips and go through St. Augustine and take 2 or 3 days to get down there. And I made her a little rack so she could draw and entertain herself. The dog would be to the left, and she'd have her little drawing thing. So she taught herself to draw. But one of the things I did do in the studio, even when she could barely walk, I'd have her come in. I'd say, Maggie, what's going on? What do you think's happening with this painting? She'd look at it and give her opinion. So her eye got trained, and she was always going to galleries and to museums. She kind of grew up doing that. And I didn't want her to get into this, but she just has stumbled into it, and she's quite good at it. She's got a good reputation. She's getting a lot of attention. And she's going to take a semester off. This will be a junior year in New York at the School of Visual Arts. She's taking a semester off to intern with Larry Gagosian in his worldwide gallery. So you might as well see the belly of the beast, you know. So, but you do what you can for your children. You plug them into certain things, you know. If she was going to be a shooter, I'd sign her up for the NRA. But she just happens to be a wonderful artist who's very smart and clever and an inspired young feminist and the next generation of them, I think.
That's incredible. You know, I've heard you talk about galleries and how the business is operated. And I know the internet has blown up what I do for a living and changed it so much. It's really changed what you do too, isn't it? The galleries and so forth.
Well, think about this. Every piece of art that moves in my business, FedEx is involved and the internet is involved one way or the other. I've got a network of galleries that take the work on consignment, and you know it's you know, and they do a really good job for me out there. I don't have a gallery. I don't, you know, and Wyatt Waters is a great friend of mine, but he's got his own shop over in Clinton, and I could no more do that. I couldn't be involved like that. They earn their percent by just by me not having to put up with the general public. But I make an awful lot of art that I float out there, and I these dealers of mine will show the risky work too. I appreciate that. They can't always move it. But same thing's true with you. We have a mutual friend, Pat Oliphant, who had 350 papers in his height, and he put these wonderful cartoons in them. They ran all the time, and you guys are not muzzled. I mean, you can say anything you want to say, whereas I think there's a firewall that used to be between editorial and commercial. It's falling apart now. That doesn't happen to you, I don't think. I don't believe editors walk in and tell you what you can draw and what you can't draw.
No, they don't, but it's still, you know, and it's because everything's measured by clicks or by usage and so forth, so it's a little bit different. Talk about Pat for a second. I remember he was here. He's an incredible sculptor and a visual artist, as well as being an incredible cartoonist, and his work was on display here at the Mississippi Museum of Art. The mayor at the time came in and was kind of giving me the cold shoulder because he didn't like my cartoons, and then was start sucking up to Pat. And I was like, Mr. Mayor, this man right here will gut you and eat you for dinner. Pat really was. But I mean, to have those kind of friends, to be able to have a friend like Pat Oliphant, how valuable is that as an artist?
Well, listen, I know Pat, but through his wife, Susan Conway, was a dealer there in Washington, and they were courting one another, and she was showing my work. But I've been a great admirer of Pat's. He's Australian. He came here in the 60s, got his Pulitzer Prize early on. But my deal is if you can describe a cartoon and get a laugh, it works. And before I knew Pat Oliphant, Jimmy Carter had just been elected, and he was in Washington, and Pat made this great drawing of a limousine with a corpulent figure in the front seat, looking over in the back, giving the new guy a clue as to how to function. And he was crossing a bridge. All this is going on in one cartoon. And in the back is Jimmy Carter with a snorkel and a mask. I'm looking, there's a little eyes.
And Ted Kennedy's driving across the bridge.
It was just remarkable, you know. And he did one recently that about 10 years ago, the Catholic Church was having a very bad month. And Pat made this drawing called The Running of the Altar Boys. And he has these black-clad priests running down the steps of an edifice called the Church of St. Pedophilia. These little altar boys are running out front, you know.
Just brilliant.
And it came out just when the running of the bulls in Pamplona happened, which we've all been aware of since Hemingway wrote The Sun Also Rises. So that cartoon stayed on the New York Times website for less than a minute.
Then they got a phone call straight from the Vatican.
But I love Pat, and I pay homage to him in my book. I adapt that, and I thank him. I call him a curmudgeon from early on, who I owe a great deal to.
Talk about, you know, to be a good writer, you have to be a reader. To be a good artist, you have to see art and have to be able to see the world. Talk about some of your favorite artists and some of your favorite writers.
Well, if I start dropping names, I'll leave some out. But let me tell you what Washington, D.C. has done for me.
Okay.
It's not the greatest art town from the point of view of one's career.
Yeah.
If I depended on the collectors in D.C. to keep me alive, I'd starve to death a long time ago. But the National Gallery and the Smithsonian and the Smithsonian Art Museum, and I've been up there. I've been doing now for about 30 years a Culture Chat show on the PBS station in Washington. We just come in and do the show and leave, and it's given me access in a way, and some travels come with it, so that's helped. And I've got a huge library. I never walk into a museum that I don't get a catalog, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with that library too. If Ole Miss had built that new art building they keep promising me, I'd give it to them for their library, but I don't want to just give it to any old library. And it's got to be, young artists need to be come into a library and steal a book. I've got books from Mississippi College that I ought to take back, I guess, but I probably won't.
Like the phone's just ringing. They heard that.
They own me about that. But you know, DC's been good for me like that. And the artists that I admire, they're legion. Most of them are 19th century American Luminists or Renaissance painters like Rembrandt or Vermeer. Are the three Southerners that were the modernists. When you think about Cy Twombly, Robert Rauschenberg, and Jasper Johns, they were from South Carolina, going backwards now, and East Texas and Lexington, Virginia, complete. They don't get any recognition for that, but I see the narrative in all their work. I really, really do. And as far as writers are concerned, of course, you live in a place like this. The ghost of William Faulkner hangs high over the place. But I had a football coach in Morton named Puddin Davis. He was from up in Grenada, Mississippi, and he introduced me to Ernest Hemingway's short stories. And in 1962, we were reading The Snows of Kilimanjaro and The Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber. I hadn't read that in 55 years, but in the spring, I was staying at a friend's guest house and walked in the guest room, and there was the paperback copy of that. I sat down, read that short story, The Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber, and it was not as good. It was better than I remembered it being. And I didn't know people like Macomber and his rich wife, East Coast folks who went to Africa, and she was having an affair with the white hunter, you know, and courage is lost and courage is found. And that's just a Hemingway story, but it was just remarkable. And he got so much said in such a short period of time.
You travel all around the world. You're about to go to Italy soon. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, but you get to travel around the world. When people find out that you're from Mississippi, what's the reaction?
Well, you know, Mississippi the stereotype exists. I thought it was about to go away, like racism. I thought it was going to go away, but it's all come roaring back on us, you know. I think most of the people who have strong opinions about Mississippi have never been here. And Trent Lott said something I agree with. You know, they don't expect very much of you. You know, you can kind of come in under the radar. It's easy to outflank them, you know. But I don't have to do much more than open my mouth, and it's got Mississippi plastered all over it. I'll listen to them. And I don't try to dissuade them. I just suggest that they might want to come down there and take a look, that it's a complicated place. That Eudora Welty and William Faulkner came from Mississippi, and it's no accident, you know. The fire burns a little hotter down here, you know. One of the things I said, and I got a big laugh the other day at some board meeting, was that who says the Lord doesn't have a sense of humor? He takes a place like Mississippi and fills it up with Africans and Scots-Irish, then he takes the money away. It's kind of what's been going on down here, you know. And the place has changed so much since I was born in 1944. And anybody who says it hadn't has just got their head in the sand, you know. It's remarkable when you think about the violence. I'm surprised there hadn't been more, you know. And the American Civil War has come and gone. It's 150 years now. And interestingly enough, the 150th anniversary of the Civil War wasn't celebrated like the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Movement was. But it's all about the South when you think about it, you know. So we're just turning it over, and it's grist for our mill as artists. And I wouldn't be from anywhere else.
You know, I'm not from here technically, but I moved here 20 years ago. And
You're from East Tennessee, I think.
East Tennessee and North Georgia. And I've had the opportunity to leave several times with job offers, and I've stayed because I really believe that kind of everything that goes on here is almost like grit for an oyster. You know, that's how you end up getting the pearl. But also, too, the thing I like about it is the fact that you and I are getting a chance to talk. But we have such a great art community here and music community and writers community where everybody comes here and we're almost kind of on the same plane, and we can sit there and talk, and you can have access to people. I mean, you know, I can go see Robert St. John, you know, and talk a little bit about his food, or I can go see Wyatt and talk about his paintings, or, you know, you might bump into Grisham in town one day. I mean, that's something that's really amazing about this state, isn't it?
Well, I finished a little story recently by saying when it comes to Mississippi, ain't nothing virtual. It's all real, so watch out.
That's true. What's next for you?
Oh, man, I'm just working. I'm making the best work of my life right now, I think. And you were talking about this trip to Italy. I'm excited about that. I've been to the American Academy in Rome once before, not as a fellow, but as a visiting artist. And my wife and I are going back last week in September, first week in October. Oliphant will be there, so we'll have some fun doing that. And another Mississippian, Dan Jordan, you know, who got out of Ole Miss when Robert Kyatt did. As a matter of fact, he pitched when Kyatt was catching up there, and he ran Monticello for a long, long time. Did a great job up there. As I'm fond of saying, as only Nixon could go to China, only a Mississippian could go to Monticello and bring the Hemmings cousins and the Jefferson cousins together, and he did that with a big picnic. So it was kind of a wonderful thing to do. So I'll get a lot of work done over there. I've got something I said I was going to do, and they'll hold me to it, is make some plein air paintings about the parks, about the pastoral landscape within the city. And there are a number of them there, so it'd be good to do that and go to some cemeteries and eat and drink and laugh out loud. We're going to have some fun.
Well, you know, it's funny because I called you up the other day and you said, yeah, I'm on the front porch right now having a drink in Matheson. And I so wanted to get in the car and just come up and join you. I was like, okay, I need to come up because like I said, I want to be when I grow up, if I ever grow up. But Short Mean Fiction is a really good read. Well, you hit it out of the park. Good stuff, really is. And I know, are there going to be more?
Well, yeah, I think so. Julia Reed talks about being an accidental food writer for the New York Times. I'm an accidental fiction writer. These stories were all lost in 45 years of sketchbooks. I just went back through the sketchbooks, and I laughed out loud at some of the things I thought were important then and some of the critiques, but there were little ideas for these fictions. And there's one story, a friend and writer friend said, well, they just complete, were they finished? No, there's one line that was in quotes that I built a whole story around. It says, honey, you'd sooner get a certified letter from Satan than to mess with me tonight. And I don't know who said it, but it's in quotes, and I built a story around that.
I love that.
It's a good one. Open all night's the story.
Bill, I really appreciate you taking time to come see us today.
Marshall, I wouldn't have missed it, man.
I could probably talk to you for another 5 hours. It would be pretty easy.
Well, let's get that bottle of whiskey and just stay right here.
That would be fine.
It's a very comfortable chair.
It is nice, isn't it? I think I may take it with me when we're done.
Don't go anywhere, man.
Bill, thank you so much.
My pleasure, baby. I enjoyed it.